What if the person you look down on today turned out to be the only one who could save your life tomorrow? One arrogant laugh. One humble offer. And a twist that left a billionaire completely frozen. This is the incredible story of Jamal Wright, a black mechanic from Atlanta who proved that real value isn't measured in money, but in skill, heart, and perfect timing. Like this story already? Smash that like button right now, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And drop a comment below, tell me where in the world you're watching from. Are you in the USA, UK, Jamaica, Canada, South Africa, or somewhere else? I read every single comment and love hearing from this amazing community. Now, let's get into the story. Jamal Wright was 34 years old, a single father, and one of the best aircraft mechanics most people had never heard of. Raised in the west side of Atlanta by his grandmother after his parents passed in a car accident when he was 12, Jamal learned early that life didn't hand you anything. He put himself through technical college while working nights at a warehouse, earned his airframe and power plant (A&P) license at 22, and spent the next decade fixing everything from small Cessnas to corporate Gulfstreams at a regional airport outside the city. He wasn't rich. Far from it. His small auto and aircraft repair shop sat in an old brick building he rented month to month. The sign out front read Wright Aviation and Auto Repair in faded red letters. Most days he wore grease-stained overalls, kept his tools spotless, and drove a 15-year-old Ford pickup with 280,000 miles on it. But Jamal had a gift. He could hear a problem in an engine the way a pianist hears a wrong note. Planes talked to him, and he always listened. One humid Saturday afternoon in August, a sleek black Mercedes Maybach rolled up to his shop, followed by a flatbed truck carrying a sleek private jet, a Bombardier Global 6000, worth over $60 million. The kind of plane that screams old money and new power. Out stepped Richard Harrington, 62, white, silver-haired, wearing a tailored Navy suit even in the Georgia heat. He was the founder of Harrington Global Logistics, a billionaire who moved cargo across continents overnight. His net worth hovered around $4.2 billion, and he was known for being blunt, impatient, and absolutely convinced he was the smartest man in any room. Richard's pilot had reported strange vibrations during descent into Atlanta the night before. The usual high-end maintenance hangar at the main airport was booked solid for 2 weeks, and Richard needed the jet ready by Monday for a crucial deal in Dubai. Time was money, a lot of money. A friend of a friend had mentioned this little black guy out in the sticks who supposedly worked miracles on engines. Richard figured he'd give it a shot. Worst case, he'd fly commercial, God forbid. Jamal wiped his hands on a rag and walked out to meet him. Afternoon, sir. I'm Jamal Wright. That your bird on the truck? Richard barely looked at him. Yes. Global 6000. Vibrations on final approach. I need it diagnosed and fixed by tomorrow night. Money's no object. Jamal nodded, already walking toward the plane. He climbed the steps, popped the engine cowling, and started listening, feeling, inspecting. 20 quiet minutes passed. Richard checked emails on his phone, growing impatient. Finally Jamal came down. Got it. Loose compressor blade in the port engine, stage 3. Vibrations coming from microcracking. It's not critical yet, but if you take off and push it hard over the Atlantic, that blade could liberate and take the whole engine with it. Catastrophic failure at 40,000 feet. Richard raised an eyebrow. And you know this how? I've seen it before. Twice. Once on a Challenger, once on a Falcon. Same symptoms. Fine. Fix it. How much? Jamal scratched his chin. Parts about $40,000 from Bombardier, if they have it in stock. Labor. I can do it myself, $500 flat. I'll work through the night. Richard stared at him for 3 full seconds, then burst out laughing. A deep, condescending laugh that echoed across the empty lot. $500? Son, I spend more than that on lunch. You think you can touch a $60 million aircraft for pocket change? I've got mechanics in Geneva who charge $20,000 just to look at it. Jamal didn't flinch. He just met the man's eyes. Sir, I'm not them. I'm offering to fix it right, tonight, for $500. Take it or leave it. Richard shook his head, still chuckling. Tell you what, I'll pay you $2,000 if you actually fix it. But $500? That's insulting. Makes me think you don't know what you're doing. He turned to his driver. Load it back up. We'll fly it to Miami tomorrow. I'll pay whatever it takes there. Jamal shrugged. Your plane, your choice. But if you take off with that blade, you might not make Miami. Richard waved him off and climbed back into the Maybach. But here's where fate stepped in. As the flatbed began to pull away, Richard's phone rang. It was his lead pilot, urgent. The Dubai deal had moved up. They needed to leave Sunday morning, not Monday. Miami wasn't an option anymore. There was no hangar available anywhere closer than Toronto, and that would take days. Richard cursed under his breath. He looked back at the little shop, at Jamal standing calmly with his arms crossed. He told the driver to stop. Fine, Richard barked, stepping out again. Do it. But if you damage anything, I'll own this shop and everything in it. And I'm paying $2,000, not a penny less. Jamal simply nodded. I only asked for $500. That's all I'll take. Richard rolled his eyes. Whatever. Just fix it. Jamal worked all night. Alone. Under floodlights. He pulled the engine cowling, removed the fan section, extracted the damaged blade, machined a temporary reinforcement sleeve on his old lathe, a trick he'd learned from an old Navy mechanic, and reinstalled everything with precision that would have made Bombardier engineers nod in respect. By dawn Sunday, the engine spooled up smooth as silk. No vibration. Perfect balance. Richard arrived at 10 a.m. with his pilot. They ran a full ground test. Flawless. The billionaire wrote a check for $2,000. Jamal handed it back. I said $500. Richard was annoyed but impressed despite himself. Keep it. You earned it. Jamal tore the check in half. I earned what I quote, $500 or nothing. For the first time, Richard actually looked at him, really looked. He wrote a new check for $500. Jamal accepted it. The jet took off an hour later, bound for Dubai via a refuel in London. And that should have been the end of the story. But it wasn't. Over the North Atlantic, 6 hours into the flight, cruising at 41,000 feet, disaster struck. A massive bird strike, a flock of geese at altitude, shattered the starboard engine's fan blades. The engine flamed out instantly. Alarms screamed in the cockpit. The plane yawed violently. The pilots declared emergency, began descent toward Iceland, but the damaged engine began vibrating catastrophically. Shrapnel risk. Possible uncontained failure. Then the port engine, the one Jamal had fixed, began showing the exact same vibration pattern from before. The temporary sleeve was holding, but the stress from compensating for the dead starboard engine was pushing it to the limit. The captain made the call, divert immediately to the nearest suitable airport, Shannon, Ireland. They were losing altitude fast. In the cabin, Richard Harrington sat pale, gripping the armrests. For the first time in decades, he felt powerless. He thought about his wife, his 2 daughters, his legacy. He thought about the mechanic he had laughed at. And then, the vibration on the port engine stabilized. Slowly. Steadily. Jamal's reinforcement held. Perfectly. The microcracks didn't propagate. The sleeve absorbed the stress. That engine kept turning, smoothly, reliably, all the way to Shannon. They landed safely. No injuries. The jet was damaged, but everyone on board walked away. Investigators later confirmed the starboard engine was destroyed, but the port engine, repaired by a small shop mechanic in Atlanta for $500, had performed flawlessly under extreme conditions. It had kept them in the air long enough to reach safety. When Richard stepped off the plane in Ireland, his legs were shaking. He pulled out his phone and called the only number he had for Jamal, the shop line. Jamal answered on the 3rd ring. This is Wright Aviation. Richard's voice cracked. This is Richard Harrington. You saved my life. All our lives. Jamal was quiet for a moment. Just doing my job, sir. No, Richard said. You did more than your job. You did it after I laughed in your face. After I insulted you. He paused. I was wrong. About everything. 2 weeks later, Richard flew commercial back to Atlanta and drove straight to Jamal's shop. This time, he wasn't wearing a suit. Just jeans and a polo. Humble. He handed Jamal an envelope. Inside, a check for $5 million. And a second document, partnership papers. Richard wanted to fund a state-of-the-art aviation maintenance facility, co-owned with Jamal. Full scholarships for young black and minority mechanics. National expansion. Jamal stared at the papers. I don't need charity, Mr. Harrington. This isn't charity, Richard said firmly. This is investment. In the best mechanic I've ever met. And in making things right. Jamal thought about his grandmother, who'd always told him, skill is your wealth. Never let anyone make you feel small for having it. He signed. Today, Wright Harrington Aviation Services operates in 5 major cities, training hundreds of young technicians every year. Jamal still wears overalls some days. He still drives his old Ford pickup. But now he also sits on the board, mentors kids who look like him, and knows his worth isn't decided by anyone else's laugh. Richard Harrington tells everyone the story, how he once laughed at a black mechanic charging $500 to fix a $60 million jet, and how that same mechanic saved his life for exactly that price. He ends it the same way every time. Never underestimate someone because of how much they charge, or what they look like. The person you laugh at today might be the one God sends to save you tomorrow. And that, family, is the story of Jamal Wright, the black mechanic who turned one arrogant laugh into a legacy of lives saved, dreams built, and respect earned. What did you think of this one? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, tell me where in the world you're watching from right now. Like, subscribe, share with someone who needs this reminder, and I'll see you in the next story.